Let's bring you up to speed with the latest around the conflict in Iran. President Trump announced that a ceasefire between Israel and Iran is now in effect, calling on both countries to please do not violate it. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just confirmed Israel has agreed to the ceasefire, saying the goal of removing Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile threat has been achieved. Iran's foreign minister says his country has no intention to continue attacks if Israel ends what Iran describes as illegal aggression against its people. Tehran launched several waves of strikes in the hours after Trump's initial announcement, but stated those strikes had come ahead of that agreed deadline. Let's take a look at the price of oil, which has moved lower on the back of the Israeli Prime Minister's confirmation of the ceasefire. WTI, Brent, both down about 5% in the latest trade. Let's get back out to Dan for his reaction to Benjamin Netanyahu confirming this ceasefire. And Dan, my question now is, what does this mean about the fate of Iran's nuclear program?
Indeed, that's a big question at this hour. And of course, right now, the immediate focus is on this ceasefire just coming into effect. The final piece of the puzzle here was confirmation from the Israeli side that we would see this ceasefire now getting underway, and we have just received that. So Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu actually issuing a statement just a short time ago. And inside that statement, he says, in light of achieving the objectives of the operation and in full coordination with President Trump, Israel has agreed to the president's proposal for a bilateral ceasefire. The statement also goes on to say that last night, Prime Minister Netanyahu convened the cabinet along with the Minister of Defense, the Chief of Staff, the head of the Mossad, to report that Israel had achieved all of the objectives of its operation. It says that with regards to what it has achieved here, Israel has removed what it called a dual immediate existential threat. That was both in the nuclear and ballistic missile fields. In addition, the statement goes on to boast here that the IDF has also achieved, through the course of the last 12 days, full air control over Tehran skies. It says inflicted severe damage on the military leadership, and it adds destroyed dozens of central Iranian government targets as well. So this ceasefire is now in effect, but of course, not before we saw Iran making a final salvo in this conflict with Israel, sending missiles into southern Israel that ultimately resulted in 3 people being killed in the south of the country, according to Israeli sources. This apparent de-escalation also comes, as you know, after we saw Iran launching what appears to have been a symbolic attack on the U.S. Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar. That is the largest American military installation in the region and home to thousands of U.S. troops in Qatar. It is also symbolic because it is the site of one of the highlights of President Trump's visit to the region last month. He was there on this base, giving a rousing speech to the troops that was broadcast internationally. And of course, that certainly captured the attention of the Iranians while he was here. Of course, what happens next here remains to be seen at this point. What we don't know at this stage is whether or not this ceasefire is going to hold. That's the question being asked in the region right now. And beyond that as well, exactly where this will ultimately leave, as you say, the long-delayed US-Iran nuclear talks as well. That is at the very center of this conflict that has unfolded over the last 12 days. Whether or not we will see the US also effectively having been successful in bombing Iran back to the negotiation table is also a big question mark at this point. Iran is certainly emerging from this moment in an incredibly weakened position, not just at a central level, but also weakened in terms of how its proxies are able to respond. And from the US side as well, the president clearly taking a victory lap here, declaring a strategic success to this mission, not just in terms of eliminating the threat for Israel by dropping these bunker buster bombs on those nuclear facilities inside Iran, but are also now paving the way for what could be potential negotiations on that nuclear file as well. And of course, this is being closely watched as he heads into the NATO meeting later today, where he is likely to have some wind in his sails. So exactly what happens next in the region, as I say, is a big question mark at this point, but clearly a sigh of relief here as we see this ceasefire coming into effect. And that's also being reflected in risk assets today as well. We're seeing a return to trade for not just equities in the early European session, as it's being reflected in European futures, but also in the price of oil, which has collapsed, now trading at its lowest level in 2 weeks off the back of this as well. Clearly, the oil market now pricing this de-escalation path. With that, it's back over to you.